I have the privilege today of having on the other end of this Skype connection Michael von Hausen. Michael is a urban planner. He's got about 30 years of experience in developing sustainable land development. He's the president of MVH Urban Planning and Design Incorporated. He's just written a book, and I'll hold it up here for people to see, called Dynamic Urban Design, and he was very kind to provide me with a copy. So we're going to do something a little bit different here. Normally when we on EV World we talk about electric cars and bicycles and things of that nature. We don't talk so much about the environment in which they actually operate. So what I'd like to do is maybe talk a little bit about that, because I think as we move forward, we really need to be thinking about the role of design and how those two, how sustainable transportation and sustainable urban design and I guess suburban design really fit into that. So Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
My pleasure, Bill. Great to be.
So the big news, of course, is that you just won a huge competition to design an entire city in China. Talk to me about that.
Well, it's very exciting news, Bill. We just were over the last 2 months. It was a very short international design competition starting at the beginning of June, and we made our final presentation on July 26th. 5 teams were shortlisted from an original 8-team international shortlist.
Okay.
There, the competition began with a series of parameters. In this particular case, a very big area around a beautiful lake. And so this new eco-city, in other words, it would be a model in China. And so where I came in as a support, actually I led the international group, but I was supported and a lot of the work was done by the Guangzhou Planning and Urban Design Planning Institute.
Okay.
They are a firm of 1,000 employees who actually direct the planning and design of Guangzhou, which is a city of 20 million people.
Yeah, it's a huge area.
So anyway, the excitement began, and genuinely they embraced me as the green guru from North America, whatever that was, but they really respected my role in creating the overall framework for the metropolitan area plan, which is to house 1.1 million people. Wow. With central business district that will be, just imagine this, an area that's, the central business district will be most probably the size of downtown Seattle, or in Vancouver term, Vancouver, Canada, it's about 3 times the size of that, and will house 150,000 people. Wow. 150,000 jobs. So very importantly, in a current topic is, how can we live, work, and play in the same area? So bicycling, using all this new green technology, part of it is making the footprint smaller and having an increased quality of life and really a healthful place where we can actually prosper. In other words, sustainability in this case is my goal when I go over and hopefully help build and implement this city, is to make the cost of construction cheaper and the cost of operation of this cheaper, and then meet our other targets of reducing energy use, increasing pedestrianization, and most importantly, increase indicators of prosperity and human health.
Okay.
Not only for the city, one of the big ideas I introduced at the beginning of our award-winning presentation was we wanted to not only clean the air and water for this new metropolitan area, but also start to clean the air and water for the entire region.
Yeah, because that is a huge problem there. So
we presented we have a 20-minute video presentation, a 200-page document, and a 38-page summary. So it was very comprehensively thought out and presented. So now we're in the stage where, wow, we won. Now what happens? That's
It
where
reminds me. It reminds me of the Robert Redford film, The Candidate, where
yeah,
at the end of the movie he says, "I've won. Now what do I do?"
absolutely, absolutely. So I turned to my Chinese colleague and partner, and I said, our work on the plane on the return flight. I said, our work in terms of implementation, creating a funding and financial structure for this city, and I have a background in development economics and real estate development, is only starting. Because one of the things the mayor told me after our presentation, he said, you've got some interesting ideas, and he's fluent in English because he went to Ohio State University as a master's.
Of course.
And he said, well, it's going to be really expensive. So tomorrow, actually, I'm meeting with Colliers International here in Vancouver to hopefully help support the whole financial framework and implementation. In other words, this isn't a dream plan in that it has a structure and a framework that I think we can execute and therefore demonstrate some of these concepts on the ground.
Yeah, well, of course, that brings me to a statement from the book that I thought was interesting. In chapter 14, you say making sustainable design happen. It says, it's quoting Mahatma Gandhi, it says, the difference between what we are doing and what we are capable of doing would solve most of the world's problems. And I think you make that point that that without having not only the support of people, but also having the funding mechanisms in place, a lot of these concepts just go nowhere, or all the excitement begins to drain away as over the fact that we just simply don't have the resources to make it happen. So that's exciting to hear. Well, let's talk about the role kind of transportation then in this whole thing, because I kind of wonder, it seems to me that urban planners sort of have this challenge that we have built over the last 60, 70 years an infrastructure built around the automobile. And so I kind of see this dichotomy that happens is that as an urban planner, do you design for the automobile so the environment fits the automobile, or do you design, and make the automobile fit, and its use fit the design? That's kind of the challenge I see with us moving forward.
Yes, an absolute critical assumption in future urban design and its framework. The framework we used in this particular eco-city, and it's been adopted by a number of cities, led by the city of Vancouver. What they start with in their transportation plan is a pedestrian-first attitude. In other words, if you imagine a triangle, at the top of the pyramid is pedestrian. At the bottom of the pyramid is the single occupancy vehicle. In between, you've got bicycling, transit, bicycling, and then you get into service vehicles. But the last thing you plan for is single occupancy vehicles.
Okay.
One of the things that Larry Beasley, a former director with the city of Vancouver, and a number of other, I think, astute transportation planners are using as an axiom, they actually say that that congestion is our friend. Because like in Los Angeles or like in Atlanta, where you get to a point where the engineers are absolutely correct when they can predict absolute gridlock. They know when you go from 15 miles an hour average speed, which is most probably that in Los Angeles during rush hour or even off-peak, even in Seattle, that in fact they can predict when everything's going to stop. And so that old axiom of if you build it, they will come, that's absolutely correct. But if we reverse the pyramid from top of pyramid being auto to bottom pyramid auto, we change our approach. In other words, if we would give this problem to an astute grade 7 class, we'd say, we've inverted this pyramid, and we're going to start with the pedestrian, and you're going to design the city around that. In this particular, in Huangshi, China, our whole CBD is pedestrian first. So we have a pedestrian zone. It could be a series of canals where pedestrians interact, limited access to vehicles, only service vehicles. We overlay that then with a whole tram system in the central business that connects to the residential, overlay that with a bus system, overlay that again with access from the tram directly to a high-speed train. The train station is being built as we speak, and it's a high-speed train of 300 kilometers an hour that's connecting Beijing through to Guangzhou. And that's normally an 8-hour trip. It is now 4 hours.
Right, yeah.
Or, it was 16, now it's 8.
Yeah.
Between this center and South China, it will be 4. So all of a sudden, this will be a magnet for all sorts of, and in transportation planning, very important. It's like any city. Give people multiple choices and give people a whole sequence of different experiences. And you've created the platform for a dynamic, resilient city.
Yep. Well, I think one of the observations I wrote about this recently, was the fact that what's happening with this high-speed rail system in China is it's actually creating the secondary, if you will, bedroom communities, in a sense that can be anywhere from 60 to 150 miles away, because if you consider that you get on the train and it only takes you, 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour to get into Beijing, for example, you can actually not only live out there, but you can actually relocate less critical parts of your business out to those areas. You can reduce costs, you can improve employee lifestyle and things like that. So I'm getting a sense that that may be what's going to happen with this community you're planning.
Yes, it could be. We want to be careful too to provide what we call a jobs housing balance.
Right.
We had, it's one of those things that, again, are hugely important, where you provide, let's say, 1 out of 2 jobs per household locally. So then, in fact, you only have one commuter or one person who's commuting that 10 kilometers. The other one is local. And that's very important in that it provides support for the children, it's support for schooling, it provides flexibility for, call it the next generation of family in our society, which we know in North America is somewhat fragmented because both parents are out of the house.
Yep.
And if you live in suburbia, guess what? What's happening with our security in our households is that, in fact, a whole suburban landscape is vacated for 12 hours.
Yeah.
That is scary. We don't have that diversity. And as you and I do, I have my studio out of my home, so I can travel less, so my footprint is less. And I think that there's changes in our society, especially in the next generation, where when I actually asked my graduate class, would they live downtown Vancouver or in a suburban location? 5 years ago, and taken a demographic of balance of male-female between 25 and 55, because this is a graduate class.
Right.
5 years ago, it was split half and half. Given a 2,000 square foot home in a suburban environment, or 2,500, and a 1,000 square foot apartment. This year, I asked the same question, and 100% said downtown Vancouver.
Wow. Of course, you're doing a lot of right things in Vancouver too. So
yeah, obviously attractive because you've got a 1,000-acre park in the downtown, or off downtown you've got oceans on each side. But it proves to us where we provide our solution to the future of this world when we talk about carbon footprint, global warming, is actually in our cities, because that's where our economic generators are, and therefore that's where the money to restructure our cities. Unfortunately, Detroit's going through, call it the bottom of the curve.
Yeah.
But I know PPS, I'm part of an international outreach program with them in terms of finding placemaking in these cities. We have to go back into those downtowns of America and make them fantastic. I talked to a colleague yesterday who was just in Denver. I'm in Seattle quite frequently, and other North American cities, that there are great stories. Part of San Antonio, Texas, there are great stories. Downtown New York has come back, and we can't lose faith. And what's happening, and the trend just before I published my book, is that they were seeing across North America, there was many downtowns, that there was generally the older trend was people leaving downtowns, but the retrend is the term gentrification. I think we have to reterm that to say we have to repopulate and revitalize,
Right.
vitalize our downtowns.
Yeah, the term I'm using is re-urbanization.
Yes, exactly.